themselves in a world where the only acceptable way of addressing the racial problems in America is through the idiom of CRT. Simply telling them that they are flirting with cultural Marxism is not a compelling strategy. They need rather to be shown that, while some of the problems they see and that CRT highlights are real, CRT itself ultimately does not offer solid answers. In this context, it is important to realize that while critical theories come in various forms, race, gender, queer, post-colonial, and so forth, they all share certain things in common. Most notably, the view that claims to truth are ultimately manipulative. Whether these serve old-style class interests, as the early Frankfurt School claimed, or must be understood within the far more complicated and opaque model of intersectionality as advocated by later thinkers. Ultimately, they are all lethal to Christianity, a religion built upon truth claims and absolutes. This fact also points to the implausibility of the eat the meat and leave the bones eclecticism that some Christians have presented as an acceptable approach to, say, critical race theory. To the critical theorist, the distinction between meat and bones is itself a construct of a cultural system that needs to be challenged and overthrown. It, too, must be debunked and discarded. This is why the flirtation of some Christians with CRT is so dangerous. To be coherent, it must involve the acceptance of the legitimacy of critical principles and methods that cannot ultimately be restricted to the question of race, but must also be applied to sexuality and gender. One cannot laud CRT as liberating and maintain biblical teaching on the sex binary and sexual mores as necessary. To understand why this is so, Christians need to see how critical theory developed, exactly what its principles and its claims are, and how they are, in the final analysis, antithetical to Christianity, or indeed to any view of the world that uses stable categories of meaning. They need a book that engages this task, but in a manner that eschews jargon and offers clarity. And that is what Shenvi and Sawyer do. In this excellent volume, they offer both a summary history of critical theory and then an exposition and critique that seeks to show both where critical theory asks good questions and grasps something of the truth, and where its overall program deviates from a Christian way of thinking about the world and indeed opposes the Christian gospel. This is not a cheap polemic, but a vital handbook that will give the listener a better idea of what the goals of critical theory are and how its methods are intimately connected to its political programs. Shenvi and Sawyer avoid the laziness of those polemicists who think their job is done if they can trace an idea back to Marx or Marcuse and instead seek to present critical theory both on its own terms and in relation to biblical truth. If, as the writers point out, all truth is God's truth, then we should not fear robust engagement with critical theories, nor acknowledging those insights that can be found there. But if all truth is God's truth, we should also not hesitate to reject that which is ultimately incompatible with Christian orthodoxy. Walking that careful but necessary path in our troubled times is very important. And in Shenvi and Sawyer, the listener will find calm, charitable but forthright guides. This is an important book that all who are concerned about critical theory should study. Carl R. Truman, Ph.D., University of Aberdeen. Previously a William E. Simon Visiting Fellow in Religion and Public Life, James Madison Program, Princeton University. Currently Professor of Biblical and Religious Studies, Grove City College, Pennsylvania. Chapter 1. A Looming Crisis. This book is not about the Republican Party. This book is not about the Democratic Party. This book is not about the Libertarian Party, or the Green Party, or the American Solidarity Party, or the Whig Party, or the Bull Moose Party. This book is not about politics. When talking about social justice,